Howdy, Sander here again. Just before work, figured I'd talk a little bit. One commenter said that my business idea sounded cool, and that made my day. Thank you so much, commenter. I'm sorry I'm blanking on your username, but I figured if it sounded interesting to that person, maybe I should expand on it a little bit more. It might be interesting to more people. So I have a few sort of interrelated ideas for web services or apps or whatever you like to call them. The exact format almost doesn't matter. And they're all centered around a similar idea. It's group-based networking. The first one is an idea that I tried to push for quite a while. I even brought some pitch competitions called IRL. The premise is that there is a problem. There is increasing loneliness and social isolation, increasing social atomization, as Marx might say. But this is before I was a Marxist. I developed this 6 years ago. I had the idea. And maybe even more. Yeah, I think before that, eight years now. Yeah, it's been kicking around my head for a while. And the trend indeed has been going on for quite a while. If anything, it's increased since then from what I've read. The stats on loneliness. Obviously the pandemic hasn't done any favors. But yeah, generally people are becoming more lonely, more socially isolated. I think it was around full 80% or something of Americans have not talked to anyone in the last month outside of people at work or their nuclear family, which is far lower than it used to be. I think also the average number of close friends has gone down drastically. In the 80s, it was around 3 to 4. Now it's somewhere between 0 and 1 for most people. I think that's the mean. Anyway, stats aside, it's a problem. And the app called IRL would help people by using the best psych research I could find on making and maintaining platonic friendships to help people form social groups. So it would match people by psychological metrics, specifically 3 of the 5 factors in the 5-factor personality model, which is one of the more reliable ways you can judge a person's personality. As in, it's like reliable. It's one of the few psych metrics that it's like repeatable and you get the similar result each time. Which is a good sign scientifically. And it also uses shared activities when people are free. It sort of takes care of that logistical figuring out when each person is free, part of organizing a group event. And it takes into account location as well. So it helps people by taking care of a lot of the logistical issues in meeting new people. And I think there's a lot of potential in it, but still, obviously during the pandemic, you don't want to meet up in real life. But I think there's quite a bit of potential in the idea, and I would love to develop it further if I could. So that's to address loneliness. The other problem that I've become more aware of since I've graduated college is not being paid very well. And also just a lack of high-paying jobs in general, difficulty of getting a job, and Co-Operative would hopefully help solve that. It's a similar thing to IRL, where it matches people together by group, or at least lets people sort groups they would like to join based on different statistics, and it would help them form industries, worker cooperatives, wherein you would be paid the full value of your labor. There are millions of people perfectly capable of work who are simply not doing it because fast food companies are only willing to pay them, $8 an hour to flip burgers when they're providing food for people. And I think that work actually has tremendous value. Or else McDonald's would not be a multi-billion-dollar company. It's clearly extracting quite a lot of value from its workers. And people not wanting to work for minimum wage anymore when there's decent unemployment is an easily solved issue. You just help people form co-ops. Now, admittedly, for that, you also often need to pool money or get a loan. And it is, I've heard, harder to get loans as worker co-ops. But I think that's where talking to people who are already in the industry, like Mondragon or B corporations, could help a lot. And I think there is money in it, and it would be hugely beneficial for the people who engage with said app, right? You'd be doing the same work you'd otherwise do at a minimum wage job. You just get paid way, 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 way better, and you'd be doing it with your friends, and you'd all be benefiting more or less equally. Sounds good to me. I don't know. There's one final one, which I think I'm far enough away from work to talk about, which has to do with organizing. So, the basic gist of it is, I think one of the biggest barriers to organizing is often not knowing whether other workers are on board with you, whether or not you have the support of other people. Because, it's a little bit like the prisoner's dilemma, where if you have faith in other people and get screwed over, it's pretty bad. You lose your job. And just in terms of social interactions, trying to figure out, do you support it? I might support it is a little tricky, right? You don't want to out yourself, and yet you do want to encourage the other person to say yes. So, just in having those interactions, I figured, man, it would be nice to have some kind of service where you could see whether or not other people are into the idea of unionizing. Where it's on the back end sort of guaranteed that people are who they say they are. And that's not quite anonymous, but the publicly available data is anonymous, if that makes any sense. Now, obviously, that idea is a little dangerous, because if it is compromised by management, it would be disastrous for quite a lot of people. And the data could certainly never be sold. You'd have to have reliable people running the software. I trust myself. I would not betray the cause. But that one's a bit of a sketchy one, I'll admit, even though I think it would also be very, very useful. I haven't really even come up with a name for it yet. Union Eyes, maybe? I like the idea of splitting up a word and just adding a hyphen to it. I think that seems to work well for apps, right? But yeah, those are my ideas. Oh, there's one further one about the Co-Operative app that was actually brought up by this anarchist fella who I talked to in my de-radicalization interview. Really cool guy. I want to talk to him again someday. In fact, I should probably reach out to him. Anyway, while we were talking about these same app ideas, he was like, well, I often had a similar one about mutual aid. And I thought that was fascinating, because mutual aid is it's farther along the line to communism than cooperatives. But as I see it anyway, the whole idea of a gift economy and mutual aid, which I realize are slightly separate things, are a little bit culturally incompatible with the culture we have today of mine, right? And so you kind of need a cultural shift. I think that cultural shift is pretty achievable with worker cooperatives. Now, I also actually had a talk with a very nice lady who seems to be better versed. Actually, I shouldn't say lady. I don't know what gender they are. But I had a comment explaining how anarcho-syndicalism is a little bit incompatible with the idea of worker co-ops, kind of. It's complicated, and she explained it better than I could. I recommend you actually go check her comment out. I think it's hearted on one of my videos. But the gist of it is that cooperatives really aren't going quite all the way in terms of anarchy, and I agree. I would like for it to go farther. I think that there's something to be said for a phase of cultural transition, just to move people away from selfishness, to see that they are not an island. And while I do see how worker cooperatives in some ways hurt class consciousness, I think it's hard for class consciousness to get worse than it already is. It gets people invested in the profit motive, which it produces a lot of the ills of capitalism. But it at least moves people away from the autocratic, non-democratic mode of capitalism, which we currently have. And it sort of encourages people to be more socially minded. All that is a long-winded way of saying, I think that there is a reasonable way you could have these two apps sort of be combined, one facilitating mutual aid and one facilitating cooperatives, because both are sort of part of a same cultural transition from being very privately, individually minded and being more collectively, socially minded. Individuality is an illusion regardless. You can't exist without the physical world around you, that's for sure. And it would be hard to exist without the help of other people. Some people may be giga-chads who can farm entire fields on their own, but most people need help of others. Even if they're farming those fields, most people use equipment produced by others. No man's an island. And I think that worker cooperatives reveal that idea to those who engage with them. I think that mutual aid and gift economies are the natural conclusion of that social mindedness. I could be wrong, but I see it as somewhat compatible, and I think that there is a lot to be gained by combining those two ideas. Anyway, with that, I have to go to work. I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you liked it, please tell me so. I'm always happy to talk to commenters. And I'll see you guys probably tonight. I'll make another video. All right, bye.